A nice perspective or way to look at 3D movement is through the eyes of two segments and how they interact. And a nice way to look at that also is the idea of proximal to distal. So, looking at the idea, okay, well, how does the trail elbow react and how does it interact? A nice perspective to take when looking at 3D action is looking past just one segment. So let's go with one segment and then let's go to the next proximal segment to it and see how they interact with each other. So that's what we're having a look at here in terms of the trail elbow and the trail hand. We have our amateur on the left and our professional on the right hand side. So let's roll into these golf swings on the left hand side first, and just that nice interaction, that nice play as we see those traces start to work back between the trail elbow and the trail hand. And we'll do the same with our professional over here on the right hand side. Again, the trail elbow and trail hand working back. And about shaft parallel, all seems well with the world in both of these movements. If we continue on with the amateur on the left hand side, here's where we start seeing a little bit of a change. So the elbow starts retracting as the hand stays away. And now we start seeing a little bit of a difference between the path of both these segments. So we have the elbow starting to retract behind the player, starting to move behind the rib cage towards the player, while the wrist or the hand still maintains its same arc as it was traveling on early on. And as we work now, the elbow starts to raise up. So maybe replacing a bit of the wrist set. But again, the arc of the hand is not really changing. It's continuing on its original path. However, the elbow is now again adapting to that hand path. So we can see the elbow really being the dominant influence on this player on the left hand side, this amateur. The elbow really moving the wrist in this case, or moving the hand till we get up to the top of the backswing position. If we look at the player on the right hand side, our professional player, very much everything moving in unison. So the hand, the elbow, very much moving together to arrive at a point at the top of their respective backswing. And again, different positions at top of backswing, absolutely fine, no issues with that. But even just looking at the curve and the proximity, or sorry, the similarity of the curve in left versus right, it's quite obvious we have a little bit, perhaps you could use the term dysfunction or inefficiency on the left hand side, whatever you feel would be more appropriate. And then as we start down, again, looking to our player on the left hand side, as we start our way down, again, the yellow now indicating the hand path and the elbow path. As we start down, working our way down, there is a little bit of similarity there as the elbow and the hand path move a little bit closer. And then again, we see that elbow very much moving on a lower, a more downward trajectory than the hand is moving. The hand arc staying curving out a little bit, the elbow now starting to work back down. And then we see the proximity of the head as this player works down to last shaft parallel, the head now starting to move back to maybe affect what the elbow is doing, but definitely the elbow moving on a more straight vertical downward path than the hand moving. We go back to our pro on the right hand side here, and as they move down again, that beautiful symbiotic move between the pass of the hand and the elbow as the player works down. Very much both of those moving together and similar ish again paths till they get down to that last shaft parallel position. And you'll notice that's very much done in isolation. Those paths very much together, moving in the same arc, the same direction, but an isolation of the body tilt, not providing those arcs. And again, moving further on the left hand side back to our amateur, how to then get the club to the golf ball. And again, now we get that kind of rejoining, that the elbow and the hand moving in similar positions, but that little maybe thrust of the elbow through impact, the kind of balancing, or sorry, the narrowing of that path right at impact there as we go. So one of the nice perspectives to take when looking at 3D movement is to take one segment and not only look at that segment, but look at the actual one most proximal to it, so the closer to it. So one of the nice perspectives to take when looking at 3D movement is to not only just look at one segment, but look at the segment most proximal to it. And in this case, we're going to look at the trail elbow and the trail hand path throughout the golf swing. So when looking at 3D, one of the perspectives I like to look at is not only looking at one segment, but looking at the segment that's most proximal to it and seeing how they interact together and perhaps which one is more influential in the player. So we're looking today at the trail elbow and the trail hand, or the right elbow and the right hand. We've got our amateur on the left and our professional on the right. Let's roll into these swings. Let's go to about shaft parallel, and all seems well in the world with both of these players. Both paths, let's say, those red lines indicating the path of the wrist, or the hand, excuse me, and the elbow. Both of those are fairly similar, moving in similar directions at similar rates of elevation, let's say. Let's continue on with our amateur over here on the left-hand side. And here's where we see things start to change. The elbow starts to maybe retract a little bit closer. The path or the arc starts to get a little bit more abrupt. While the hand continues on a very similar path, the elbow is now moving closer, being pulled more closer to the body as the player continues. As we keep working up, we see more of a lift of that elbow now. So the arc, so to speak, has gone. The arc shape still remains with the hand, however, but the elbow is definitely moving more elevated, more in a vertical capacity all the way up and then moving back into an arc as he nears the top of his backswing. We look at our pro over here, and again, both hand and elbow moving very much in a similar arc-like pattern, very much moving in the same way, in the same distance, so very much moving as one unit, one might say, but very much together. If we look over on the left-hand side in transition, how did that hand path and how did that elbow path move? Very much starting down, again, moving together in a nice way with the amateur on the left-hand side. But here again, we see that change. So now that elbow moving in a more vertical downward capacity, the hand doing something similar, but the hand then having, again, a little bit of a curve to it as the elbow lowers, 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 lowers. Again, we get that hand path curve, however, the elbow moving more downwards. And as we get to last shaft parallel, now we see that head start to tilt back into those path areas that we see, trying to create perhaps that lowering mechanism or add something into the golf swing. The pro on the right-hand side, as they work down, that elbow, hand path, very much moving again in similar-ish directions. The hand path obviously moving a little bit more out than the elbow early on, but then those paths starting to coincide or coexist together as that player moves down that lovely arc of both the elbow and the hand path, moving in the similar, let's say, graph or in a similar shape or curve, whatever phrasing again you would like. Get down to last shaft parallel. Very, very different profile over on the right-hand side versus the left-hand side. And again, how do we then deliver to impact? The player on the left-hand side, that club golfer, as that elbow lowers, nearly that punch elbow of lowering that elbow down to deliver that golf club. Then the elbow working very much then up through impact, pulling very abruptly up through impact as the hand path continues in a similar capacity. But that elbow again in downswing, very much lowering vertical, vertical, lower, and then lateral, and then moving up. And again, looking back to our pro over here, very much that curve in down at the elbow, then that lateral through impact, but curving up. So always kind of curving down with the hand path. We reach our low point, and then that elbow and that hand moving up slightly below that low points achieved into that finished position. So very much when we're looking overall at the movement of these two players, there is definitely a disassociation on the left-hand side between what the hand is doing, what the elbow is doing. There's definitely on the right-hand side more continuity or a better relationship, let's say, between how that elbow and that hand moves. Now, how would that be profitable for the player, or how would that really create more efficiency for the player? Well, let's have a look at something that we call speed gains. So again, we have the same swings. We have our pro on the right-hand side, our amateur on the left-hand side. If we simply look at these values, now, these are not the overall values. So this is not telling us how fast the player is moving overall. It is simply just breaking down how efficient are they in moving the speed that they've created from one segment to the other. So if we were to start over on the left-hand side with our amateur player and just look at how they've kind of moved that speed throughout. So we start off that 67.8 degrees per second transfer from pelvis to chest. Now we get that big jump, the thorax to trail arm, 452, so very quick. And then again, as we get towards impact now, there's a delay between the trail arm to the trail hand. And then we get trail hand to trail club, actually increases at the end. So kind of nearly this roller coaster of transfer, kind of a little slow, then quick, then a little slow, and then quick again at the end. Now we look over at our Tour Pro here, and again, these are not reflective of the actual amount or the rotational speeds. This is more the transfer, but we have 88 to start, so a little bit faster than what we saw. Then we've 3228, excuse me, and then we've 843, then 1029. So a very gradual acceleration through the system on the right-hand side as this player works back and works down, those speeds really being transferred, those speed gains between the pelvis to the thorax to the trail arm to trail hand, the trail hand to club, being a very gradual increase of the speed that's in this golf swing. Over on the left-hand side, very much stop, start, stop, start. And really, again, that's really telling the story of adaptation or excessive adaptation in the golf swing. So when looking at segments in the golf swing, it can be fun to look again at segments in isolation. It can tell you quite a lot. However, what might be a more fun way, a more effective way, or maybe from an information perspective, more efficient, is looking at the proximal segment to the segment that you are looking and how they interact together. And you can really stretch this as far as you like, but in this case, trail elbow, trail hand path, how they work together, how they interact. very much can tell the story of how the player is really using the energy and speed they've created in the swing and how efficient they are at really gathering that speed at a very nice acceleration rate to culminate towards impact.